I, Viserys Targaryen, do hereby name Rhaenyra Targaryen, Princess of Dragonstone, and heir to the Iron Throne.
Hey there, quirky folks! I'm your host, Anna, and today I'm going to answer one particular question that you may have about Rhaenyra in House of the Dragon. She is among the top most important characters that we're going to witness throughout the entire series. And people are already rooting for her, since she shares quite a few parallels with Daenerys Targaryen. After all, she is the 6th great-grandmother of Dany. But even though King Viserys decreed that his firstborn child, Rhaenyra, will be the heir to the throne after his demise, people are still left asking whether she actually becomes queen or not. Everyone's in doubt, because even though Rhaenys Targaryen had a greater claim to the throne than Viserys, the latter was chosen as the successor to Jaehaerys the Wise. Even in episode 2, Rhaenys had this to say.
Men would sooner put the realm to the torch than see a woman ascend the Iron Throne.
And in the history of Westeros told in Game of Thrones, it was suggested that a queen hadn't officially sat on the Iron Throne before Cersei Lannister. Well, this isn't entirely accurate, because Rhaenyra does become the queen. But how does it happen? Why did Game of Thrones tell a different story? Was it another Daenerys situation where she actually got very close to the Iron Throne, but never got to sit on it? Well, I am going to answer these questions based on the source material presented in George R.R. Martin's novel, Fire and Blood. So, there will be spoilers for the upcoming seasons of House of the Dragon. If you don't want to know the truth, then you can leave the video right here. But I assume that you clicked because you wanted to know. So let me get right into it. Yes, Rhaenyra does become the Queen of King's Landing. She does get to sit on the Iron Throne. But this history was erased by her half-brother, Aegon II. That's why Game of Thrones suggests that Cersei was the first woman to sit on the Iron Throne. But here's how things happened in Martin's novel. Rhaenyra took possession of Dragonstone at the age of 16 in the year 113 AC. She ruled in Dragonstone for several years while King Viserys was alive and ruling over King's Landing. During her rulership in Dragonstone, Viserys had multiple children with his second wife, Alicent Hightower. And she herself had a couple of marriages. The first one was with Laenor Velaryon, the son of Corlys Velaryon and Rhaenys. Rhaenyra had 3 children with Laenor, Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey. And then she married her uncle Daemon and had 2 children with him, Aegon III and Viserys II. As she was awaiting the birth of her 6th child Visenya in 129 AC, her father Viserys died in King's Landing. And this is when the scheming cunt Otto Hightower finally played his hand and the Dance of the Dragons began. Before I move on, let me make it clear that during this time, there were 2 supporting parties. One of them was called the Greens, and they were loyal to Alicent Hightower and wanted her sons on the throne. The opposing party was the Blacks, who were loyal to Rhaenyra. So with the help of the Greens in King's Landing, Otto had Viserys and Alicent's son Aegon II crowned as the new king. They denied the wishes of King Viserys and did not tell Rhaenyra of her father's demise. All supporters of Rhaenyra in King's Landing were either killed or imprisoned. But when the news of Aegon's coronation eventually reached her, she was fueled with rage and went into an early labor. This led to her having a stillborn child. She blamed this tragedy upon Otto, Alicent, Aegon, and the Greens and decided to arrange her own coronation. The crown that her father Viserys and her grandfather Jaehaerys wore was stolen and brought to her. Then, Daemon himself crowned her as the true queen in Dragonstone. Rhaenyra was offered a solution, where her children would get to be the heirs of the throne if she renounces her claim. But she turns it down. She tried to gather more support by sending her 2 eldest sons, Jacaerys and Lucerys. But when they were killed, Rhaenyra went into a maddening rage. She took King's Landing by force. She rode on her dragon Syrinx. Daemon rode on Caraxes, and Lord Corlys' army helped her claim the throne. It was almost like what happened with Daenerys when she went Mad Queen. Even in this situation, a lot of people died as the Targaryen civil war happened. Ultimately, Rhaenyra managed to get to the throne, but sat on it only for 6 months. That's why she was called the half-year queen. Meanwhile, Aegon II had managed to flee. Then in the 6 months that she ruled, everyone eventually turned against her. She was desperate for money, as the Greens had already emptied the vault. They had sent some of it away for safekeeping, while they had spent the rest. Riots began to happen, and she ultimately had to flee King's Landing herself. Aegon II caught up to Rhaenyra at Dragonstone and killed her by feeding her to his dragon, Sunfire. After that, he decreed that Rhaenyra's term as a queen would never be acknowledged. She would only be called a princess in all the chronicles and court records. So that's how Cersei Lannister became the first queen to sit on the Iron Throne, even though she technically wasn't. Ultimately, a lot of parallels could be drawn between Rhaenyra and Daenerys Targaryen, as both their stories are quite tragic and full of betrayals. They were the rightful heirs to the Iron Throne and wanted to do good. But it just wasn't meant to be for them, as they became their own worst enemies after facing betrayals from others. We'll be covering more of these parallels in a separate video, so be on the lookout for that one. Meanwhile, hit the like and the subscribe button if you enjoyed this history lesson. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!